In this case, a boozy photo. We're not even sure it's boozy, really. It was posted on MySpace. It cost one Pennsylvania woman her degree. 27
Have you logged on to Facebook today?
You're asking me?
All right. Twitter. I have a Twitter. I have a Twitter thing.
They just got me on Twitter.
Yeah.
I want everybody here to be careful about when you post on Facebook. Because in the YouTube age, whatever you do, it will be pulled up again later somewhere in your life.
Police can't bust someone on drug charges because of a picture on their page, but they can kickstart an investigation, and that's exactly what they do.
Using MySpace is kind of a
don't know what to say because then people look at the picture and try to figure out a reason that's not
Gerald Allen.
But when we begin around the early 2000s to have what are called social media, where people begin to say, well, it's not just having a web page, it's not just having email, it's not just having messaging on my phone, but rather I could have a site that connects me to other people and they can see what I'm doing and we can have sort of formal relationships and then we can set up social groups.
Facebook it was much more exclusive. It initially started at Harvard, and then they opened it up to Ivy League schools, and then they decided to open it up to colleges. So it was much more exclusive and actually excluded people who might be considered quote-unquote creepy. But now, as of a few years ago, Facebook is open to everyone.
What we've seen is more people looking at privacy issues on Facebook. We've seen people looking at the whole question of what constitutes a friend. The whole notion that the word friend has become a verb, to friend someone, is kind of an issue with some people. And does that not sort of dilute or erode the real meaning of friendship in the real world when there's this kind of trivial way to think about it in social networks?
It's a different notion of what it means to be a friend on say, Facebook, MySpace. That the idea of being a friend, in some cases, is simply, defined in terms of, an acquaintance or somebody who might have an interest in information on your site. That in the live world may not be considered having a friendship. It also might be that friendship or being a friend is defined in terms of, well, we're part of this group that's interested in certain things.
But our media systems, our traditional media systems, are very much like this. There's a few speakers and there are great big audiences. And so the desired effect is to have some sort of generalizable impact across as wide an audience as possible to be socially significant. At the end of the day, the new technologies, as I say in my classes all the time, they're really more like the telephone than they are like television, in that they are about mobilizing individuals. They're about interaction among individuals. And that interaction doesn't just have to be 2 people, it might be 5 people, or it might be 10 people. But it is about having personal contacts and contacts of contacts.
Social network sites, often called SNS for short, are differentiated from other types of social media sites in that there's an inherent network structure with what people choose to post to these sites. So if you're a member of Facebook or MySpace or Friendster or another social network site, You post information about yourself, but you also share who your friends are, which allows marketers or researchers to identify not only information about people, what their hobbies are, what they search for, what they shop for, but also, more importantly, it allows entities to identify people's friends. And as we know from social science theory, in particular theories of homophily, people are very much like those people who they hang around with, or birds of a feather flock together. So that in particular, if I'm a marketer, I'll identify people who have bought my product, and then if I have the information who their friends are, I know that they're much more likely to buy my product than someone else, because they're very much like the person who bought my product.
But you got to start to wonder, well, maybe we should think about having kids think critically about advertising in all cases, but also advertising in these social networking sites, because they're going to get more and more of it, and they're going to be targeted to that particular demographic.
The interesting thing about social media is that people like the potential of being able to reach a lot of people or to be very targeted. You know, the medium has a lot of reach, but at the same time, they still expect it to somehow be private or within a domain that is still about them personally. And it's a hard line to walk because, in fact, by definition, none of these sites is private.
But it's a double-edged sword because you have the notion of what's called persistence, in that anything that you write on a social network site or you text to someone else doesn't go away. It's stored somewhere in digital form, and that's very high risk because you're not always going to be 23 and going out to a party. Yet what you said when you're 23 going out to the party is stored somewhere.
The old 5-paragraph essay is really a kind of acronym now, where now students are communicating with each other through these multimodal ways, and the use of these social networking sites encourages that.
And early on in new media studies, there was a lot of fascination with things like avatars and aliases and, you know, on the internet nobody knows you're a dog and kind of all that stuff. The idea that it was possible to be anonymous, or it was possible to take on different identities, or to to spoof different things. There was this whole idea that in cyberspace, you know, this separate place, this wasn't real reality, that it was all kind of a fabrication. I think we are recognizing that it's not simple. You can't just say, oh, my friends are like this in, you know, geographic and material space, and my friendship patterns and my family is different, you know, over here online. It's just not like that. They just flow back and forth. I think that's kind of where we are now. It's a rather more complex, but I think a more realistic way of thinking about the role of these technologies in people's lives.